Hi, everybody. How's everyone doing? Day 2 towards the end. Any energy left at all? Okay, good. Awesome. All right. So if you're here for Probuilder and Progrids, you're at the right talk. My name is Alicea. I'm an evangelist at Unity Technologies, and I'm excited to give you all an introduction to Procore for prototyping for games and cinematics, all within the Unity editor. Now, before I jump in, I'm curious, who here has used Probuilder before, heard of it? Raise your hand. Okay, some of you. What about Progrids? Polybrush? Great, so all of you are going to learn a lot of cool things today. This is perfect. So we're going to get started by going over what these tools are and how to get them set up in your Unity project. Then we'll go review the Procore basics right in the editor so I can show you how to create, edit, and iterate meshes with the Procore tools. Then I'll show you how to use them to communicate creative intent, how to use these prototyping tools to build out your stories, your scenes, your worlds, to plan out your games and your cinematics. And then I'll tell you about enhancing your workflow with some tips and tools that you can use to work with artists using software like Maya. Now, first off, Probuilder is a tool that you can use within the Unity editor to create either basic or advanced 3D models or meshes. It has common 3D software functionality like creating edge loops, adding faces, extrusions, and more. And it comes with options like complete UV unwrapping, vertex painting, exporting to different file formats, and tons more. Now, Progrid is really cool because Progrid is the 3D development equivalent of drawing on graph paper. It's a way you can simply snap and align your objects and prefabs in your scene. It's really great to use with Probuilder while you're building your meshes because you can make sure that when you're doing extrusions and edits, they're all aligned and snapping at the same measurements and angles. And this is really good for avoiding things like mesh gaps and light leaks that might cause problems with your objects later on. Now, Polybrush is a tool that you can use to sculpt out shapes out of Probuilder meshes. Really fun to use for organic creatures, for faces, for terrain, and you name it. And you can do things like painting and custom lighting and coloring, blending textures across the mesh. And you can even assign other meshes via prefabs to your Polybrush and paint them onto your primary mesh. Now, where do you get these Procore tools? You can find them for free on the Unity Asset Store. Just search for Probuilder, Polybrush, Progrids. And if you haven't heard the news, Unity actually recently acquired these tools. So starting from Unity 2018.1 onwards, you could download all of these tools directly via the package manager. Another tool you'll see me use in this demo is the FBX exporter. This can also be downloaded from the Unity Asset Store. And within it, it contains integration that you can install for Maya that will allow you to round trip your assets between Maya and Unity. And you'll see how that works a little bit later. So before I jump into the editor, I'll share some of the cool assets that I'm using to build out this scene. I really can't stress the power of the Procore tools being used with the Unity Asset Store. So here I have a low poly water effect I'm using, a nice skybox, and some tree assets. And really, the whole point of the Procore tools is so that you can spend time building out your ideas, not having to wait for final art assets. You can just hit the ground running, build out your idea, test what you want to do, and then spend all the time you need to finalize everything you need for your project. Now, in this case, I have, I'm going to set up an island later on. I have everything I need to do that between what I can build in Probuilder and what I have from the Asset Store. So let's go ahead and let's build. Let's get started. So here I have my base Unity scene. I have that low poly water and the skybox. And I'm going to go ahead and start using Probuilder to build out some terrain. And I think for the sake of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to use these tools really quickly, and then I'll show you the final results of what you can make over certain periods of time. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Probuilder window. To do this, I go to Tools, Probuilder. Yes? Oh, that's odd. So I have my base scene here with the assets I have from the Asset Store. And I'm going to go ahead and open the Probuilder window by going to Tools, Probuilder, Probuilder window. And here I see all my options on the bottom menu right here. Probuilder likes to help you out by highlighting what options are relevant to you when you're starting out or based on what you have selected. So the options here I have are related to starting a new shape, but if I have an existing shape and let's say have an edge selected, it'll instead highlight what options are applicable to what I highlighted. So, and also for who here has a background in 3D modeling or does 3D models, if any? Okay, so some of you, based on whatever software you may use, may be more comfortable with the menu and icon mode. So you can just right-click here, click Use Icon Mode, and you might see some icons that are a little bit more familiar to your skill set. In this case, so we can all follow, I'll go back to text mode. And I'm going to go ahead and click Create a New Shape with Probuilder. And here we have a shape that Probuilder procedurally generates for us. Now, this is in our scene, but it's actually not a game object just yet, because one of the really cool, powerful things about Probuilder is that you can customize all sorts of shapes before you lock it down as an asset in your scene. So I don't just have to have a cube. I can make a prism. I can make a doorway. Let's see. I can even make cute little donut. There's all sorts of shapes that you can make with Probuilder. One shape I really like is the stair example, because there's so many ways that you can customize these shapes to be exactly what you need and save time. Because if I want to build a staircase, I could spend all my time, making rectangles, stacking them on top of each other. I don't have to do that. I can have a staircase here. I can add curvature. I can change the amount of steps I have. And by using these tools, I can just quickly flesh out what I want to do. And this is really great for when you're doing stuff like level design and adding different floors and buildings. So in this case, though, I want to make a basic cube shape. I'm going to make this 50 by 50 units wide, 1 unit deep. I'm going to press Build Cube, close out this Shape Tool window. And here I have a nice flat surface to work with for my scene. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open my Polybrush window and show you all some features of Polybrush. So go to Tools, Polybrush, Polybrush window. And here I have my Polybrush options up here on the top on these icons. Now I want to use the Push-Pull Vertex tool to affect this mesh and to kind of raise it and sculpt it and mold it. But if you see, if I click on it and now click on my Probuilder object, nothing happens. And that's because this needs to have many faces for us to work with and not just one face that can't be really moved. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of our selection modes to select the face that I need more faces with and subdivide it. Now there are 4 selection modes in Probuilder. I can select either the entire object like I have now. I can select the vertices. I can select the edges. And all of these I can select and click on and move with the standard Unity move tools. But in this case, I want to select the top face here. I have it highlighted. I'm going to check my Probuilder window. And there's an option that says subdivide faces. Here we go. I'll subdivide it a couple of times. Basically, it keeps dividing the cubes into quarters. 256 faces is perfect. So now I have a bunch of faces now to start sculpting out my mesh. I'll go back to the Push-Pull Vertex tool. I'll hover over my mesh here. And by pressing down left mouse button, clicking and holding, I can start molding my mesh. Now, this effect here is happening very softly, and I could ramp this up by changing my brush strength to 10. If I click, you see, now I'm sculpting out my mesh. I can focus on an area to make it taller. I can press Control-click and hold to make dips in the mesh, push everything down instead of up. And there's all sorts of ways that you can affect how this mesh plays out. The different brush settings can be really fun to toggle with. The main core ones are the strength, inner radius, and outer radius. Inner radius is what receives the full strength of the brush. Outer radius is where that strength kind of tapers off. And you can change the direction of how the brush affects the mesh. So instead of making everything go directly up and down, we can change how it's shaped by the brush normals, by vertex normals, and more. So once I'm done kind of meshing out my scene here, I can go ahead and I'm going to use the Smooth tool to smooth it out because it's looking kind of rough. So by selecting the Smoothing tool, I can change the same settings, outer radius, strength, and inner radius. I'm going to bump the strength down to 3 because I don't want it to smooth out too much. I'll keep my brush size intact. And if you see if I'm moving my brush over my mesh, it's now smoothing it out, making it a lot more smoother and nicer to work with. And depending on you're working on, you might not want to smooth it. Other things you may be doing, it might totally work for you. There's lots of fun ways to experiment with these tools. Now, another cool thing I'll show you is how to paint vertex colors. Now, this tool allows you to paint in any colors you want onto your mesh, and you're not painting a texture, you're actually adding this data into the mesh via vertex colors. So I'm gonna select the flood option here, which is like our paint bucket tool, and I'm gonna click my mesh here. Oh, my strength is really up, so I'm gonna bring it down to 1. Strength in this case is equivalent to opacity or alpha. So if I click here, I fill it, my mesh is a nice green color. I can select the brush option, bring the opacity down a bunch, pick a brighter green color. I can start painting here. I can build up the color. I can change all sorts of things here. And one thing you can do with all the polybrush tools is have brush mirroring. So I could select a different color, let's say, and have the x-axis turned on, and I could start painting with 2 brushes now. Really helpful, really helps speed up production depending on what you're working on. Now I have this here, and one thing I like to use Probuilder for sometimes is terrain, and a common question I'll get from people is, why use this tool for terrain instead of the Unity terrain system? And the Unity terrain system is awesome, it's easy, and it'll give you what you can use basically in your final project. What I really like about Probuilder is that it essentially lets me plan out everything I want in my scene beyond terrain. Without even leaving the tool, I can make buildings and houses and more. And one thing that's really cool about this is that this vertex color data is amazing to use for shaders and with tools like Shader Graph, because I can reference and affect these colors later on when I'm working with this. So the last thing I'm going to do with Polybrush is add in some prefabs. So I have some prefabs in my project folder that I added. I just searched for some trees, and I could just drag them into my little palette here. I can drag in whatever prefabs I want. I can hit Control-click to select the ones I want to kind of plot down on my mesh. I'm going to bring my strength of the brush up to 1 so they spawn pretty quickly when I paint. And if I go ahead and start clicking here, you see I automatically start painting a bunch of trees onto my mesh. Now there's all sorts of settings that you can apply to this brush. You can have it selected so that it applies prefabs based on their pivot point. You can have them parent within each other. You can have them overlap. And in this case, if there's something I don't like, I don't have to undo the whole thing. I can just select the trees that I don't want and hit delete, and it's all set. And they're all parented under the main island mesh. Now, this is basically me tinkering with these tools to show you how they work. Let me go ahead and show you what it looks like after spending a couple of minutes with it. So I'm opening a new scene where I have this island I created. Now, if this talk were a little bit longer, I would sit here with you all and show you how to make this. This took me about 10 minutes to make, and using the same exact tools that I showed you, all of you just now. So one of the things that people use Probuilder for is for prototyping game levels and ideas and mechanics. And some other ways you could use it, though, and how I'm using it here, is to plan out cinematics. So one of the things that I'm inspired by is I love action movies, and I love those action movies where like the evil villain has their remote lair on a tropical island, and then the hero comes in, does a crazy getaway on a speedboat. So that's the cinematic that I want to plan here. I want to plan out the cinematic of that speedboat getaway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a dock for the boat to depart from, and I'm going to plan my shots around there while my artists are spending their time working on all the art that we'll need for this project. So I'm going to go back to Probuilder and click New Shape. It's going to automatically generate the last shape that I tried to make, so I have that big plane here. I'll bring it out here for you to see, and I'll change this to be 20 units by 4, and I'll hit Build Cube, close the Shape Tool window, and here we have the base for the dock for my boat. Now, like that original kind of test run I was doing before, we need more faces on this object to have more options to work with. And I don't have to select every face, though, and subdivide it each time. I can just make sure the whole object's selected with the Object Selection tool and click on Subdivide Object. So I'll click on this twice, and you see now I have faces all over the rectangle here I made. Now, before I start building, I want to start using Progrids. So I'm going to turn on Progrids here, this little drop-down menu, and we have some settings here. The first thing I'm going to do is click this little eyeball icon and turn on my grids so I can see them. So you can see the grid here on the y-axis. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to snap my object to the grid to make sure that any edits and movements I do from now on are all perfectly aligned. So I'll click the little arrow here, and now it's snapped. Perfect. Now, I'm going to go ahead and turn on snapping. So, and actually, no, I'm going to show you what it looks like, how different it can look. So I have snapping off right now. I'm going to move my object, and it's moving smoothly. I can place it anywhere. But if I go ahead and turn on snapping, you can see now it'll only move in increments of 1 unit, and that's the setting that I have up there in the top corner. Now I can change this snap setting to be anything I want. I could put 15, and you'll see my grid change. There you go. And now when I move it, it snaps in increments of 15. So depending on what you want to build, you can set your setting to match that, and you're all set. In this case, I want to keep it at 1 unit. Now I'm going to go ahead and start building the next portion of the area for my boat. So I'm going to go ahead, zoom in here, click Face Selection Tool. Click on these faces here for my selection. I'll focus and zoom in more. So now I have these faces selected. Now, those of you who are familiar with 3D modeling are going to totally get this concept I'm about to show. But what I can do here is I want to make like an L shape for this boat dock. If I pull this out right now, it's going to create that weird slanted shape. And that's because when I try to move a portion of this mesh, it's actually changing the position of those faces. It's not giving me a new section or stretching out to work. So what I can do is just use one of the features called Extrude Faces and click that, or Control E. And now I have a new little section to work with, and I could pull it out, and it's coming out perfectly in 1 unit increments as I move it around here with the arrow tool. So this is perfect. This is what I need. And now what I want to do is add some legs to anchor this into the water. So I'm going to check down below. And I see I have some corners to work with here. But I see that when, I can select these 4 corners here, but I only have 1 face here to work with. I need to have more faces here, so I can just go ahead and subdivide the faces again on this face. And I have all the corners that I'd like to work with. So I'm going to select them with my selection tool. Control clicking, you can select more than 1. Perfect. And so I'm going to hit Control E. Actually, I'm going to put on the x-axis. You can see it better this way with the grid here. Control E to extrude and drag them down. Perfect. Now I have the legs for my boat dock. Now, I noticed that I missed putting down some legs here in the middle for stability, so I'm going to do that. Now, if I wasn't using Progrids, I would kind of have to eyeball this with the Move tool, or just check the inspector and make sure it's okay, and check the other legs to make sure the measurements match up. Now, all I have to do is just extrude this and drag it down, and because it's snapping to the same 1 unit increment values that the other legs are, I can just easily, with confidence, line it up, check it with the grid, see where the other legs are, and know that it's the exact perfect height as all the other legs I just made. Saves me a lot of time, especially when building more complex structures. So now I'm all done with my boat dock. I can go ahead and use object selection. I could move the whole object still with snapping and snap it to a certain spot on my island. So I'll move it back here, plop it down over here, and there I have the dock for my boat. So that just took a few minutes, and I think what the incredible thing is about Probuilder is that I'm making basic props for my game cinematic in just a couple of minutes here with all of you. Imagine what you could do in half an hour, in a couple of hours, in a day, and this tool can get really insane. So one more thing I'm going to show you. I don't have enough time to model out the boat, but I'm going to show you a cool feature in Probuilder that let me make the speedboat really quickly. So I'm going to hide this boat dock here. I'm going to see this. I have a flat surface here so you guys can see better what I'm doing. I'm going to use something called the New Poly Shape tool. Now, the New Poly Shape tool lets me place down custom vertices to make whatever shape I want in Probuilder. So I'm going to make a really rough speedboat shape here. I'm going to kind of create the base of the boat. And you could have this working with Progrids if you want. You could have it set to no snapping so you can make whatever shape you'd like. So I have a really rough base for my boat. I can drag it down or up. It automatically extrudes it. I'll click to kind of lock that extrusion in place. So now I have this base part of my boat. I'm going to use new poly shape tool again to create a really rough example of where I'm going to hold the engine for my boat. Really quick. And so lots of ways you can customize this. I have snapping. Whoop. I have snapping still on. That's why. OK. So I have really rough example. And forgive me, I'm a developer through and through. I don't have a background in 3D art, but that's why I'm really excited about Probuilder, that even I could start making like really cool 3D models really easily. I get really excited about that. And really the whole point is to have something that I can show my artists and communicate well with them. This is what I'm trying to go for. So I'm going to hide this space here so you can see it better. Really rough example of what I did for the boat. And what I did then was use the selection tool, select the vertices, do things like bevel and extrusions and edits to start forming the shape into something that looks more like a boat and less like a flip-flop. So I'm going to go hide this and show you the final boat I was able to make right over here. Now here's the boat. Let me turn off Progrids. Here's the boat I made. This took me about 20 minutes of time with Probuilder, me as a non-artist. And like I said, using extrusions and bevelings, adding in some vertex colors. For the engine back here, I made a bunch of cylinders and cubes. I stacked them together. I painted them. In just a short amount of time, thanks. I'm very proud of my boat. So in just a short amount of time, I have this really good example that I can show to my artists, and they go, okay, now I understand what you're trying to go for. Let me get to work on it. So I have this boat, and now I hear from my artists that the boat that they were working on for me is ready, and I'm ready to swap it in. So while they were working on that, what I did in my scene was that I started planning out my cinematics. I don't want to wait around. I just want to start developing and building. So I set up a timeline with some cinemachines, and I planned out my shots for my boat. So it's the getaway scene where it's getting away, and eventually I'll add sound effects and stuff. But in this case, I'm prototyping out this cinematic for the boat, and I'm ready now to swap in the boat that my artist sent me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I have my boat object here selected. I'm going to go in and right-click and select Convert to Linked Prefab Instance. This is what's going to let me be able to sync my models between Maya and Unity. I'll select this. I'll hit Convert. I'll accept the settings that it gives me. And now you see that, whoops, I'm in game mode. Now you see I have an FBX file of that Probuilder object that I made. Now it changed the material for me because it thinks that in Maya I want to use some stingray shaders or something of the like, and I just want to keep the original material I had on. So I can just use the standard vertex color shader. Now in Probuilder, for the vertex color data, you actually have to use this shader, otherwise your colors won't appear. So I'll make sure I have the FBX selected. Actually, let me go back here. Here we go. I have my material settings. And I'll drag the material onto the FBX, click Apply, and I have my colors. So my FBX is now ready to send back to my artist in case they want to work with it. But in this case now, what I'm going to do is open Maya. So I have a new scene in Maya, just freshly open. A couple of things that you should do to help make sure that your transitions between Maya and Unity will be seamless. One really important thing to know is that one unit of size in Unity is a meter, and 1 unit of size in Maya is a centimeter. So you want to make sure to change this in Maya so it doesn't affect your sizing later on. So I can do this by going to Windows, Settings and Preferences, and right here on Settings, it'll say Working Units, linear, centimeter. Nope, we want a meter. I'll hit Save. You can see now I have my scene is ready for me. So remember when I said that you can get the FBX exporter from the asset store and you can install a Maya integration? That appears right here in my file menu. See this little Unity section here. So this allows me to import my models directly from my Unity project. I'll click on Import, and I see the FBX I made right there. I'll click on it and hit Open, and there I have my model in my scene. I have materials and colors turned off for now, and I'm going to go ahead and import the model that my artist sent me. File, Import, Final Boat, FBX, and there I have the boat they sent me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it up and move it into position to take place of my original boat. So I'll move this over here. I'll scale it up a bit. I think that's good. It could be rough, doesn't have to be perfect. I'll move it back here in the center, plop it down a bit. There we go. Now I have the boat ready to replace my original Probuilder boat. Now another pro tip, especially if you're doing this and you already have things like Cinemachine and Timeline set up, copy the name of the boat that you had it named in Unity. So in this case, pbboat_3. I'll copy the name. If I open the boat file here in my outliner and see my artist called this boat the Interceptor, that won't play as nice with the settings I already had set up for Cinemachine, so I'm going to paste in the name that I originally had. And I'm going to go ahead and delete my original Probuilder boat and drag this boat file here into my Unity export set. Now, if it's not a child of that Unity export set, it will not export properly back into Unity. But now it's there. I'll make sure I have the Unity export set selected so it knows exactly what it's exporting. I'll go to File, Unity, Export. If I go back to Unity, instantly change with the new model that my artist sent me. Now, I can go ahead and start making more changes and more edits to this in the editor. My artist also sent me a really cool shader to add to the boat. So now I have a fancy new boat in my scene, and if I go back to my timeline, go back to game view and hit play, all my animations are still there with the brand new boat my artist sent me. I don't have to redo any of my animations. It's all set and all ready to go. So one other thing that I'm going to show you that I really like about Probuilder is that I can take a look at this boat model. And I see here that it looks almost perfect. I love it, but I'm really picky. I don't like that box they have put on top of the engine here. And I wish it wasn't there, but I don't want to bother my artist with something so small. I can actually change it myself, even though this was not made in Probuilder or within Unity. I can make sure I have the boat selected. Go to my Probuilder window and hit Probuilderize. This will turn any mesh into a Probuilder mesh, and all the tools that you saw me use today can be used right on this model. So I'm going to go ahead and activate face mode and select the part of the object I want to get rid of. So I want to get rid of this box. I don't want to click on all the faces, though there's a bunch of them. That'll take me a little bit. There's lots of tools within Probuilder that can help you make selections and kind of based on different areas. I'm going to hit Select Face Loop. And when I do that, it basically checks and wraps around and selects all those faces in the process. So I'll select these here and some of these. I think if I do this, it'll get all of them. Select Face Loop again. So now I have that whole little box object selected. And I can just hit Delete Faces. And it's gone. And now I'm happy. I didn't have to bother my artist. If I go back into game mode and check out my timeline, it works perfectly, even though I edited the mesh. It's all the same. And this is really how you can test out and prototype your levels and games and cinematics with using these tools. So again, this is what we've been able to do together in about less than 30 minutes. Think about what you could do with a team of people over time. And really, you can do a lot of incredible things. I'm going to open up my slides here again. So these are all games that were made using Probuilder, either for planning or for their final assets and more. And it's really incredible to see what the community's been making. And I'm personally really inspired by a lot of these projects. Whether they're using it for level design or final assets like Manifold Garden here, you can create some super incredible things with the Procore tools. But now you've seen it, and now you know enough, and you're ready to get started. So I recommend, if you want to learn more, see some videos, watch some tutorials and documentation, go to procore3d.com. And for showcasing your work on what you're doing, the social media community for the Procore tools is awesome. Blocktober happens every year. Search hashtag Blocktober to see so many incredible examples of what our community is doing. And you could share your own on the same hashtag or on hashtag Screenshot Saturday. And you're all ready to get started. So thank you so much. I hope you guys all enjoyed this talk, and I hope you all have fun at the rest of Unite India. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for that 30 minutes of wonderful time on Probuilder.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, we have to push off to the side of the conference because
I'll be right outside. You can ask me all the questions you want, and this form here, or no, it's gone. Never mind. Ignore me. I'll see you guys outside. Thank you.
Yep. So Ashley will be available just right outside the conference room. If you have any questions on what she has shown, and just a small gift from the organizer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Take care.